Hey fish freaks, Darren Wendell here with Wendell Fishing. Today I'm going to walk you through how to connect your Nocqua Pro battery kit to your Hummingbird, your Lowrance, your Garmin fish finder. Let's hop in. All right, so what we got is the kit. Inside the kit is going to have, this one is a 20 amp hour battery. They also make the 10 amp hour battery, which I've been using for the past year as well. Working great, a little smaller in size. They also make a 4.4 amp hour battery too. Now, this is my Garmin Striker 4. I also have a Garmin UHD 92 SV as well. It doesn't matter what fish finder you have, you just gotta make sure that it has enough power to juice it. For example, for the Garmin Striker 4, which is a very popular entry-level fish finder, actually one that I recommend, pulls around 0.23 amps or 230 milliamps at 12 volts. So what you do to estimate runtime is you divide the battery capacity by the draw. So when you do the math, this 20 amp hour battery, it's gonna run this guy for 87 hours. And of course, you divide it in half for the 10 amp hour. So for a side-by-side comparison, this is a Garmin UHD 92 SV. And this is gonna have, of course, a higher draw. And this is gonna draw around an amp to an amp and a half. So when you do the math on that, this 10 amp hour battery is gonna run this unit for roughly 6.7 hours. So all that to say, figure out the current draw of your fish finder, do the math, and figure out the battery capacity that you need. All right, let's hop in and get these things connected. So the kit's gonna come with everything you need. You're gonna have your charger, you're gonna have your crimp connectors, shrink tubing, and then the fish finder device cable. So what I'm gonna do is take the power cable that goes into the back of the fish finder, like so, and then we're going to cut these down and strip down these so we can put them in the crimp cable. There you go there. Now, if you see some extra wires down here, which you probably will, there's a blue wire and there's a brown wire. The blue wire is the transmit wire and the brown wire is the receive wire. But you really only use these wires if you're gonna be sharing data between your Garmin Striker 4 and like an NMEA. And so this device, I'm not gonna be doing that, so I'll be using them. So I'm gonna clip back the ends here, clip it to the installation so there's no exposed wire. And once your red and black wires are stripped, you're gonna wanna put on this long piece of shrink wrap. So don't forget this step, because you won't be able to do it after the fact without cutting all your wires again. So go ahead and run this down through here and get that out of the way. There we go, let it hang out there for a minute. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put these butt connectors on, slide it in, and then I have this tool. Go ahead and clamp that half. Make sure that's really nice and tight. Do so for the other side. Now what I want to do is take the device cable that came with the kit and do the exact same thing. So that's going to need a bit more room. Make sure black's the black. And what you have now is the connection. Now, before you do anything else, this should power up when you plug it into battery bank. So we want to test that before we move forward on this. This is a nice waterproof seal. And now this should hit the power button. Power up. Boom, folks. All right, so now we know our connections are good. We still had a couple more steps. All right, step that a lot of people miss. These butt connectors are actually heat shrink. So after you put those on, you want to apply some heat. I've seen some videos where you use some lighters. You can do that, but if you have a heat gun, I recommend that. Go and get that going. And it should look like that. Nice and clean, waterproof. We're gonna let those cool down for a second. So some of you guys might be asking themselves a question. I actually had this on my Garmin Striker 4, which is the inline fuse. This is a cylindrical fuse, and I didn't like it. So I'm gonna take it out on this one. And I'm showing you what I did with that in a second. But before we mess with the inline fuse, now what you're gonna do, and this is why it was important to put this on first, run this heat shrink tube across all the work you just did to make this nice and clean. All right, and then take your heat gun, again, start in the middle and work your way out. let that cool down a bit. Now this is cooled down. We have a nice, clean connection here. And now let's talk about that inline fuse. Now, typically your inline fuse is going to run along your positive wire between your fish finder and your battery power as a safeguard for 3 different reasons. So the first thing a fuse does is protect from overcurrent. So fish finders usually run at a low current. So a 3 amp fuse will blow if the current exceeds that amount, which is going to protect the circuitry in your fish finder. The second thing a fuse is going to do too is help prevent short circuits. So essentially, if there's a short circuit in the wiring or connection, it's going to break the circuit. And what that's going to do is help prevent from overheating and potentially fire. And lastly, we have the voltage safety margin. Essentially, a 3 amp fuse is going to allow the device to operate normally without frequent blowing of that fuse. And so the Garmin Striker 4, and you got to check it out for your particular unit, is a 3 amp fuse is going to be just fine. It's okay to move from a cylindrical to a blade fuse, which is I'm going to use. So if you use a fuse that is too high, like a 5 amp or a 10 amp, it might not blow in time and in a fault condition, right? So you want to get that safety margin for the fuse for your fish finder. And the reason I took out the cylindrical one is because Nocqua actually has a connection with a blade fuse. 3 amp fuse right there, and it comes with an extra. And so all I'm going to do is connect it. I'll show you here. It's really easy. Simply take the battery, run it in. Now take that and run it into your fish finder for a really clean, easy way to add an inline fuse with the Nocqua Pro Battery Kit. And the reason I like this because as the fuse blew on my old system, this guy right here, I would have wrapped this in shrink wrap. So I'd have to literally cut it all apart and do what we just did again. With this, if the fuse breaks, simply pop the cap, pull it out, put in a new one, you're good to go. So fun fact, if you have a Lowrance Hook 2, a Reveal, or Eagle Series fish finder, you don't have to do any of what we just did because Nocqua makes a connector cable that is a plug and play. Simply connect it from your battery into the back of your fish finder and you're good to go. You don't have to do anything, any of this stuff that we just did. So that connector costs around 12 bucks and I'll put the link in the description below. All right, now that you're all set up with your battery, you got your fish finder out there, you're locating the bass, you're throwing the lures. Have you ever asked yourself the question, what colors do bass actually see? Well, I got the perfect video for you. Check that out right there. Thanks for watching, guys. See you.